She was abandoned at the hospital by her own son and daughter-in-law after being called useless. But they made one mistake. They thought she was too old to fight back. They didn't know she had a lawyer. They didn't know she had the evidence. And they certainly didn't know their own lies were about to destroy them. What happened next changed everything. Watch until the end to discover how Marlowe turned their cruel plan against them. If you enjoy emotional family stories with shocking twists and satisfying justice, subscribe now and stay with us for the full story. The first time Seraphine Drax called me useless, she did it while spreading butter across a piece of toast. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She simply looked across my dining table and said, "You're useless if you won't help your own family." My name is Marlowe Vera. I was 68 years old, retired, widowed, and perfectly capable of taking care of myself. I had spent more than 30 years working as a municipal building inspector. I had examined hundreds of properties, signed thousands of reports, and learned one important rule: never sign a document you haven't read. That morning, however, my son Kalen and his wife had come to my house with something that looked like an ordinary folder. It wasn't. Kalen sat quietly beside his wife. He was 41, but that morning he looked much younger. He kept rubbing his thumb against the edge of his coffee cup. Seraphine, on the other hand, looked completely comfortable. She pushed the folder toward me. "Sign these, Marlowe." I opened it. The first page contained my full name, my former professional license number, and several paragraphs concerning a property development project. I looked at Kalen. "What is this?" "Just authorization," he said. "Authorization for what?" Seraphine sighed. "For our redevelopment project." I turned another page. "You want to use my professional credentials?" "Your credentials are retired," she said. "Nobody is asking you to work." "That isn't what I asked." She leaned back in her chair. "We need your professional history attached to the application. It will make the project easier to approve." I closed the folder. "No." Kalen looked at me. "Mom, please." "No, Kalen. If my name is on something, I need to know exactly what it is." Seraphine's expression changed. "You always make everything difficult. I am asking a simple question. You don't trust us?" "I trust my son. I don't automatically trust every document placed in front of me." Kalen lowered his eyes. Seraphine suddenly laughed. It wasn't a friendly laugh. "You've been retired for almost 10 years, she said. "You don't work anymore. You don't manage anything. You sit in this house and worry about paperwork nobody else cares about." I stared at her. "This house is mine." "I know. And my professional credentials are mine." "I know that too." "Then we're finished." I pushed the folder back. Seraphine snatched it from the table. "You're impossible." "No." "I'm careful." She stood. Then she looked directly into my eyes. "You're useless if you won't help your own family." Kalen whispered, "Seraphine, stop." But she was already walking toward the door. Before leaving, she turned around. "Don't blame us when your house becomes a problem." The door slammed behind her. For several seconds, Kalen remained seated. I expected him to apologize. Instead, he stood. "Mom, you should have just signed it." "Why?" "Because she needs this project. Then she can explain it properly." He shook his head. "You don't understand what she's dealing with." "No," I said. "I understand exactly what I'm dealing with." He left without another word. 3 days later, my insurance company called. The woman on the phone sounded nervous. "Mrs. Vera, we're reviewing a structural assessment connected to your property." "What structural assessment?" "There appears to be a report stating that significant defects were discovered." I stood up from my desk. "That is impossible." "I understand, but the report carries your professional identification." My hands tightened around the phone. "What did you say?" "The report was submitted under your name." I asked her to send me a copy. 20 minutes later, an email arrived. I opened the attachment. There it was. My name, my former license number, my professional designation, and beneath it, a signature that looked almost identical to mine. But I had never written that report. I immediately went upstairs to my study. The cabinet where I kept my old professional materials was locked. I opened it. My original inspection seal was gone. I checked the drawers. Nothing. I searched the entire room. Still nothing. Someone had entered my study. They hadn't taken money. They hadn't taken jewelry. They had taken the one thing that could make a lie look official. My phone rang. It was Kaylin. I answered. Mom, we need to talk. I looked at the empty space inside my cabinet. Where are you? At home. Is Seraphine there? There was a pause. Yes. I swallowed. Kaylin, did you or Seraphine take something from my study? Silence. Then he said quietly, Mom, what did you find? That was the moment I knew this was no longer a family disagreement. Someone had stolen my identity, and they had already started using it. I didn't answer Kaylin's question immediately. What did you find? He repeated. I looked at the empty cabinet in my study. My inspection seal is missing. His breathing changed. Are you sure? I've kept it in the same place for 20 years. Maybe you moved it. I didn't. He became silent again. Then I heard Seraphine's voice in the background. What is she saying? I lower my voice. Kaylin, did you take it? No, Mom. Did Seraphine? No. I wanted to believe him, but there was something in his voice that bothered me. Then find out who did. I ended the call. The next morning, I drove to the Bellwether Municipal Licensing Office. I had worked there for years, and although most of the staff had changed, the building still felt familiar. A young licensing officer named Perrin Holt greeted me at the counter. Mrs. Vera? It's been a long time. I need to see every document recently submitted under my professional license. He hesitated. Is there a problem? Yes. He checked the database. His face changed. There are 3 recent submissions. 3. All connected to properties owned by Drax Meridian Holdings. My stomach tightened. Print them. Perrin looked uncomfortable. I can give you copies of the public portions. Do that. A few minutes later, I was holding 3 reports. All of them carried my name. All of them contained technical statements I had never written. And all 3 had been submitted within the same week. I pointed at the dates. I was out of town on this date. Perrin nodded. I see that. I was visiting my sister in Northmere. He looked at the final page. There's something else. What? These submissions were uploaded from the same digital account. Whose? He stared at the screen. Drax Meridian Holdings. I left the office with copies in my bag. That afternoon, I drove directly to Seraphine's company. Drax Meridian occupied the top 3 floors of a modern building downtown. The receptionist recognized me and immediately looked nervous. Mrs. Drax is in a meeting. Tell her I'm here. She said not to disturb her. Then I'll wait. I sat in the lobby for almost 40 minutes. Finally, Seraphine appeared. She didn't look surprised. You shouldn't have come here. I stood. You stole my inspection seal. Her expression remained calm. That's a serious accusation. I found 3 reports using my credentials. You're confused. No. She stepped closer. You've been under a lot of stress lately. I stared at her. Why are you talking to me like I'm sick? Because you aren't behaving normally. I am behaving exactly normally. She smiled. Maybe Kaylin was right. About what? About you needing help. I felt my anger rise. You are trying to make people believe I'm incompetent. She didn't deny it. Instead, she whispered, be careful, Marlowe. People believe paperwork more easily than they believe angry old women. I walked out. For the first time, I understood what she was planning. She didn't need to steal my money directly. She only needed to convince everyone that I was no longer capable of controlling it. That evening, I called my attorney, Gideon Rusk. He listened while I explained everything. When I finished, he said, do not confront Seraphine again. Why? Because she wants you emotional. She already has my credentials. Then we document everything. He told me to photograph every document, change the locks, and avoid signing anything. I agreed. But before I could hang up, someone knocked on my front door. It was Kaylin. He looked exhausted. Mom, I need to tell you something. I let him inside. He sat at the kitchen table and kept his hands together. Seraphine says you're trying to destroy her company. I haven't done anything to her company. She says you submitted complaints. I didn't. He looked at me. Then somebody is using your name. I know. His face became pale. Mom, there's more. What? She has already spoken to a doctor. My heart stopped for a moment. What doctor? She says you need to be evaluated. Why? She told them you've been forgetting things. I stared at my son. Kalen, have I ever forgotten who you are? He looked down. No. Have I ever forgotten where I live? No. Then why are you listening to her? He didn't answer. I stood and walked toward the window. Outside, the street was quiet. Then Kalen said something that made me turn around. She wants to take you to St. Orazan Medical Center tomorrow. Why? She says it's for your own safety. I looked at him. I'm not going anywhere with her. He swallowed. Mom, you may not have a choice. That night, I locked every door in the house. I placed my phone beside my bed. And for the first time in my life, I slept with my purse under my pillow. I thought the worst thing Seraphine could do was forge my documents. I was wrong. The following afternoon, she arrived with Kalen. And they weren't carrying a folder. They were carrying a wheelchair. The wheelchair stopped at the bottom of my front steps. I stared at it. Then I looked at Kalen. What is that for? He wouldn't meet my eyes. Seraphine stepped forward. For you. I can walk. We know. Then why did you bring a wheelchair? She smiled politely. Because you're going to the hospital. No. Kalen finally looked at me. Mom, please don't make this harder. I am not going anywhere. Seraphine folded her arms. You have been confused, you've become aggressive, and now you're refusing medical care. I am not confused. She glanced at Kalen. See, I understood what she was doing. Every protest I made could be used against me. Every angry word could become evidence. So I became quiet. All right, I said. Seraphine looked surprised. I picked up my purse. I'll go. Kalen exhaled. He probably thought he had won. He hadn't. Before leaving, I secretly took a photograph of the wheelchair and the two of them standing beside it. I didn't know why I did it. I simply knew I would need to remember that moment. The drive to St. Orazan Medical Center took 25 minutes. Nobody spoke. When we arrived, Seraphine immediately approached the emergency department desk. I stayed beside Kalen. She handed a nurse a folder. My mother-in-law has been experiencing serious behavioral changes. I turned toward her. I'm not your mother-in-law. She ignored me. The nurse looked at the papers. Who authorized the evaluation? Seraphine pointed at me. She did. I stepped forward. No, I didn't. The nurse hesitated. Seraphine sighed. She has trouble remembering what she agrees to. I saw Kalen's face. He looked uncomfortable. Kalen, I said quietly, tell her I never signed anything. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The nurse looked at him. Sir, he finally whispered, I don't know. That answer hurt more than Seraphine's insult. I was taken into an examination room. A doctor asked me several basic questions. I answered every one correctly. My name, my address, the current year, the name of the president, the names of my son and husband. The doctor looked through the papers. You appear oriented. Seraphine immediately interrupted. She has good moments. I stared at her. The doctor asked me to describe what had happened. I told him everything. The forged reports, the missing inspection seal, the documents submitted under my name, the licensing office, Seraphine's company. He listened carefully. Then he said, I don't see evidence of confusion. Seraphine's face tightened. But she is paranoid. I almost laughed. Instead, I said, Doctor, please check when these reports were submitted. He looked at the documents. Why? Because some of them were created before I supposedly became confused. The room became quiet. For the first time, Seraphine looked nervous. Then she pulled Kalen outside. They spoke in whispers. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard Seraphine say, she knows too much. A few minutes later, Kalen returned alone. Where is Seraphine? She went home. I looked at him. Why? She said she had work. I shook my head. No. She left because the doctor didn't agree with her. Kalen sat beside my bed. Mom, I'm sorry. Then help me. He looked toward the door. I don't know what to do. Tell the truth. He lowered his head. I don't know what the truth is anymore. I wanted to answer him. Instead, a nurse entered. Mrs. Vera, we're going to keep you here overnight for observation. Why? She looked at her tablet. Your family requested it. My family? Yes. Who specifically? She hesitated. Your daughter-in-law. I looked at Kalen. He stood. I didn't request this. The nurse left. I reached for my phone. No signal. I tried again. Nothing. Then I noticed my purse was missing. Where is my purse? Kalen looked around. I thought you had it. I knew immediately who had taken it. Seraphine. My phone, wallet, house keys, and identification were inside. I was trapped inside a hospital without my belongings. An hour later, Kalen returned. He was carrying my purse. Where did you get that? Seraphine left it in the car. Did she take anything? He checked it. Your phone is here. I grabbed it. There were 7 missed calls. All from Gideon. I called him immediately. He answered. Marlo, where are you? St. Orizon. His voice became serious. Did you sign anything? No. Good. Gideon, they are trying to have me declared incompetent. I know. My heart stopped. How do you know? Because I received a document this afternoon. What document? A petition asking for temporary control over your financial affairs. I closed my eyes. Who filed it? There was a long pause. Then Gideon said, Your son. I looked at Kalen. He was standing 3 feet away. I whispered, Kalen, did you file something against me? His face went white. I didn't know what it was. Gideon continued through the phone. Marlo, listen carefully. Do not sign anything. Do not agree to anything. And whatever happens tonight, do not leave the hospital with Seraphine. The call ended. I looked at my son. Why would you do this? Tears filled his eyes. I thought I was protecting you. From what? He couldn't answer. Then the door opened. Seraphine stood there. She had returned. She looked directly at me and smiled. You're staying here tonight. I tightened my grip on the phone. She stepped closer. Maybe tomorrow, you'll finally understand that you can't take care of yourself anymore. I said nothing. She turned toward Kalen. Let's go. And they walked out. They left me alone in that hospital room. But before the door closed, I heard Seraphine whisper to Kalen. By tomorrow morning, she'll have nothing left. She was wrong, because Gideon had already started working. And the next person who walked into my room was someone neither of them knew. I expected Gideon to send another lawyer. Instead, a woman I had never met walked into my hospital room at 6:40 the next morning. She wore a navy cardigan, carried a thin notebook, and had a hospital identification badge clipped to her collar. Mrs. Vera? Yes. My name is Tamsin Rowe. I work in medical records. I looked at her carefully. Why are you here? She closed the door behind her. Because your file doesn't make sense. That sentence immediately caught my attention. What doesn't make sense? She pulled a chair beside my bed. Your psychiatric evaluation request was entered into our system yesterday afternoon. That was before I arrived. Yes. I stared at her. Are you sure? I checked twice. She opened her notebook. The request was submitted at 3:17 p.m. You arrived at 8:42 p.m. My hands became cold. Who submitted it? Tamsin hesitated. That's the problem. She turned the notebook toward me. The request had been uploaded using an external administrative account. The account belonged to Drax Meridian Holdings, Seraphine's company. I leaned back against the pillow. So, she prepared the hospital story before she brought me here. Tamsin nodded. That's what it looks like. I felt something change inside me. Until that moment, I had been trying to understand Seraphine's behavior as a family dispute. Now I knew better. This had been planned. Tamsin continued. There is another issue. What? Your emergency contact was changed 3 days ago. To Seraphine? Yes. I never changed it. I know.
How?
Tamsin pointed to the electronic signature. The signature was entered remotely. Can you prove it? I can prove when it was entered. That isn't the same thing.
No, she said.
But it's enough to make me investigate further. I studied her face. Why are you helping me? She smiled slightly. I'm not helping you yet. I'm checking whether the records are accurate. For some reason, that answer gave me more confidence than sympathy would have. Then she showed me another document. It was a billing authorization. My hospital expenses were connected to a corporate liability claim. I read the company name twice. Drax Meridian Holdings. Why is Seraphine's company paying for my hospital admission? Tamsin shook her head. Technically, they aren't paying it yet. Then what is this? A pre-authorization. For what? She turned the page. An alleged property-related injury. I stared at her. I haven't been injured on any property. I know. What property? Tamsin gave me an address. My stomach tightened. I knew the place. It was an abandoned commercial building on the eastern side of Bellwether. I had inspected it years ago. It belonged to a company recently purchased by Drax Meridian. What are they claiming happened there? A structural incident. I laughed once. There was no incident. Tamsin watched me. That's what I thought. She opened another page. The claim says you conducted an unauthorized inspection. I haven't inspected that building in years. The report attached to the claim says otherwise. I knew what I would see before she turned the page. My name. My old license number. My forged signature. But there was something new. A photograph. It showed a cracked concrete wall. I looked at it carefully. That photograph isn't from that building. How do you know? Because the wall behind it doesn't exist there. Tamsin raised an eyebrow. You're certain? I inspected that building 3 times. She wrote something down. Then she looked at me. Would you be willing to make a formal statement? Yes. Even if it involves your family? I didn't hesitate. Yes. At 9:15 that morning, Gideon arrived. I told him everything. He listened while Tamsin explained the digital records. When she finished, Gideon looked at me. This changes our strategy. What do you mean? We stop defending you. I frowned. What? We make them prove their story. He placed his briefcase on the table. Seraphine wants everyone to believe you're unstable. So we won't argue emotionally. We'll let her produce records. Then what? Then we compare them. Tamsin nodded. That may expose inconsistencies. Gideon looked at her. Can you preserve the original digital entries? I can request a legal hold. Do it. For the first time since entering the hospital, I felt that I wasn't completely alone. But there was still one question. What about Kaylin? Gideon didn't answer immediately. Then he said, Your son signed the petition. I know. Did he understand what he signed? I don't know. Tamsin quietly closed her notebook. There is something you should see. She opened a final record. It was the petition filed against me. At the bottom was Kaylin's electronic signature. But above his signature was a statement declaring that I had been experiencing memory problems for more than 6 months. I stared at the page. 6 months. I looked at Gideon. That's a lie. I know. Kaylin lived with me for years. He knows I wasn't confused. Gideon leaned forward. Then we need to know who convinced him to sign it. I thought about Seraphine. Then I remembered something from the night before. Her words. By tomorrow morning, she'll have nothing left. Suddenly, I understood. This wasn't only about my house. It wasn't even about the insurance claim. Seraphine needed control of my finances before something else happened. Something much larger. Tamsin stood. I'll be back this afternoon. Why? She paused at the door. Because I found a second account connected to your hospital records. What account? She looked directly at me. An account belonging to your son. Then she walked away. I sat completely still. Kaylin had signed the petition. Seraphine had prepared the hospital records. And now there was a financial account connected to both of them. For the first time, I wondered if my son had been a victim of Seraphine's plan. Or if he had been part of it from the beginning. I had one way to find out. And it would require me to leave the hospital without letting Seraphine know. I left St. Orson Medical Center through the service entrance at 3:30 that afternoon. Gideon had arranged a temporary room for me at a small guest house outside Bellwether. He told me not to return home until we understood what Seraphine had done. Tamsin met us in the parking lot. She carried a sealed envelope. "What's inside?" I asked. "Something I don't think you'll like." We drove to the guest house before opening it. Inside was a printed banking record. The account belonged to Kaylin Vera, but the transactions were connected to Drax Meridian Holdings. I stared at the numbers. There were deposits every 2 weeks. Some were small. Others were more than $20,000. "What is this?" I asked.
Gideon studied the dates.
"These payments started 6 months ago." 6 months. Exactly when Kaylin had supposedly begun telling Seraphine that I was becoming forgetful. I felt sick. Then he lied to me. "Maybe," Gideon said, "but don't assume yet." I looked at him. "How can you say that?" "Because the money may not have gone to him." Tamsin opened another page. "Look at the withdrawal records." I did. Every large payment had been transferred somewhere else. A construction company. A private consulting firm. Then an account belonging to Seraphine. My son's account had been used as a middle step. Kaylin wasn't necessarily receiving the money. Someone had been moving it through his name. "Can we prove he didn't authorize this?" I asked.
Not yet, Gideon said.
Then Tamsin pointed to one transaction. "This one is different." It was dated 2 days before Seraphine brought me to the hospital. The amount was $48,000. The recipient was a private storage facility. "Why would anyone pay a storage company?" I asked. Tamsin answered. I checked the address. She gave me a location. It was a warehouse on the edge of Bellwether. I knew that area. Gideon immediately shook his head.
"No.
You're not going there. I need to know what's inside. We can get a warrant. That could take days. And days are safer than you walking into a warehouse connected to your daughter-in-law." I knew he was right, but I also knew Seraphine was moving faster than we were. That evening, Kaylin called. I almost didn't answer. "Mom, what do you want?" "I need to see you."
Why?
I found out what she did. My heart tightened.
Who?
Seraphine. I said nothing. He continued. "She told me you were losing control of your finances. She showed me documents. She said the hospital was necessary." Did you believe her? At first. And now? I found the bank records. I looked at Gideon. Kaylin continued. "She used my account. Were you paid?"
No.
"Did you authorize the transfers?"
No.
"Then why did you sign the petition?" His voice broke. "She told me if I didn't, you would lose everything." I closed my eyes. "Kaylin, you already helped her take control of my life." "I know. Do you know what she did to my professional license?" "I found out today." "Where are you?" "At the office." "Are you alone?" "Yes." Gideon wrote something on a piece of paper and pushed it toward me. "Call the police if he asks you to come alone." I nodded. Then Kaylin said something unexpected. "Mom, I found your inspection seal." I stood up. "Where?" "In Seraphine's private office." My heart began pounding. "Can you get it?" "I already did." "Where is it now?" "With me." For several seconds, nobody spoke. Then Kaylin whispered, "But there's something else." "What?" "She has a file with your name on it." "What kind of file?" "I don't know." "Open it." "I can't."
Why?
"Because it's locked." "With what?" "A combination." I waited. Then Kaylin said, "I think I know the numbers."
Gideon looked at me.
I covered the phone. What should I tell him? Gideon answered quietly. "Tell him to bring the file to us." I returned to the call. "Kaylin, don't open anything. Bring the file." "Where?" "To Gideon's office." "All right." "And Kaylin?" "Yes. If Seraphine asks where you're going, don't tell her." He hesitated. "Mom, I'm scared." "So am I." I ended the call. The next morning, Kaylin arrived at Gideon's office carrying a black document case. He placed it on the table. I didn't open it. Gideon examined the lock. "Good."
Kaylin looked at me.
"Mom, whatever is inside, I think this is why she wanted you declared incompetent. Gideon opened the case after documenting its condition. Inside was a stack of property records, a list of bank accounts, several insurance documents, and one typed page. I read the first sentence. Then I read it again. It said, "Upon Marlo Vera's incapacity, ownership transfer shall proceed through the debt recovery agreement." I looked at Kaylin. She was going to take my house. He nodded. But that's not the worst part. He pulled another document from the case. It showed the supposed structural damage to the abandoned building. At the bottom was my forged inspection report. But beneath it was a second signature. Not mine. Not Seraphine's. Someone else had approved the entire claim. Gideon stared at the page. "Who is this?" Kaylin answered quietly. "I know that name." I looked at him.
Who?
He swallowed. "It's the man who trained Seraphine in real estate fraud." The room went silent. Then Gideon's phone rang. He answered. His expression changed almost immediately. "What happened?" I asked. He ended the call. "The warehouse has been emptied." I felt my stomach drop. "Everything?" "Yes." "Then we're too late."
Gideon shook his head. "No."
He looked at the final document on the table. "We're not too late." He pointed to a small line at the bottom. "Because whoever emptied that warehouse forgot one thing."
"What?"
"The security cameras." For the first time, I smiled. Seraphine had spent months building a perfect lie. Now we finally had a way to watch her dismantle it herself. The security footage changed everything. Gideon obtained it through the warehouse owner's attorney the following morning. We sat inside his office while a technician copied the files onto a secure drive. I expected to see Seraphine. Instead, I saw 3 men carrying boxes out of the warehouse at 2:13 in the morning. One of them was a contractor I recognized from Drax Meridian. The second was a man named Orson Vale. The third person stopped beneath the camera and looked directly into the lens. Kaylin froze. "That's Dorian Kess." I looked at him. "Who is he?" "The man who trained Seraphine." Gideon paused the footage. Dorian Kess had been a property consultant for more than 20 years. He had taught Seraphine how to acquire distressed properties, restructure debts, and exploit legal loopholes. But the footage revealed something more important. Dorian was carrying the original file from the warehouse. My file. The same file containing my forged reports. Gideon immediately contacted the investigators. By that afternoon, the warehouse was sealed. By evening, Dorian was questioned. He lasted less than an hour before he started talking. He admitted that Seraphine had planned everything. She had accumulated millions in debt through failed developments. My property was valuable because it had no mortgage. Her plan was simple. First, create false professional reports using my credentials. Second, manufacture a property-related liability. Third, make me appear mentally incapable of defending myself. Fourth, transfer control of my finances. Finally, use the fabricated debt to force the sale of my house. But there was one detail Dorian revealed that I never expected. Kaylin had not been chosen as Seraphine's partner. He had been chosen as her shield. She knew investigators would question a husband less aggressively if the financial records appeared to pass through his account. My son had been manipulated, but he had still signed documents without understanding them. He still had to face the consequences. 3 days later, I returned to the municipal licensing office. This time, I wasn't alone. Gideon walked beside me. Tamsin was there as a witness. Kaylin came too. The investigators presented the evidence. The forged reports, the hospital records, the financial transfers, the security footage, the recorded conversations, the original inspection seal. Every lie Seraphine had constructed was placed on the same table. She arrived 30 minutes late. When she saw me sitting there, she stopped. "You." I looked at her calmly. "Yes. You have no right to be here." "I have every right." She looked at Kaylin. "You betrayed me." Kaylin shook his head.
"No."
"I finally stopped protecting you." Seraphine turned toward him. "You would have nothing without me." Kaylin answered quietly. "I almost lost my mother because of you." Seraphine's face hardened. "You're useless." Kaylin looked at her.
For the first time, he didn't flinch. No.
I was foolish. There's a difference. The investigators began questioning her. She denied everything. Then they played the recording. Her own voice filled the room. The room became silent. She couldn't explain it. She couldn't blame me. She couldn't blame Kaylin. She couldn't blame Tamsin. The evidence had been collected from separate places by separate people. There was nowhere left for her story to hide. Several months later, Seraphine was convicted of fraud, forgery, financial manipulation, and falsifying professional records. Dorian Kess received a separate sentence after cooperating with investigators. Kaylin wasn't sent to prison because he had not knowingly participated in the financial scheme, but he faced civil consequences for the documents he had signed. He sold his car and used the money to help repay the losses connected to his careless decisions. He never asked me to forgive him. That mattered. Instead, he spent the next year earning back my trust. I returned to my house in early spring. The first thing I did was replace every lock. The second was to put my professional seal inside a small safe. The third was to sit in my study and look at the empty chair where Seraphine had once told me I was useless. I didn't feel victorious. I felt relieved. Months later, Tamsin visited me with a box of documents. "You know," she said, "if I hadn't checked the timestamp on that hospital request, none of this might have been discovered." I smiled. "And if you hadn't checked, I might have believed the records myself." She laughed. "That's why records matter." I thought about that for a long time. A lie can be repeated. A lie can be signed. A lie can even be entered into an official system. But that doesn't make it true. The truth survives when someone is willing to check the details. Seraphine had called me useless because she thought my age made me powerless. She was wrong. I didn't defeat her by shouting. I didn't defeat her by humiliating her. I defeated her by refusing to let her control the evidence. And my revenge was not taking something from her. It was watching her lose everything she had tried to steal from me. My house remained mine. My name was cleared. My professional record was restored. My relationship with Kaylin survived, although it was never the same. It became more honest. One evening, Kaylin sat with me on the porch. "Mom," he said, "I'm sorry. I know. I should have believed you." "Yes." He looked at the house. "I almost lost everything." I nodded. "So did I." He looked surprised. I continued. "But losing things taught us what was actually worth keeping." He smiled faintly. We sat there in silence. I thought about the hospital, the wheelchair, the forged documents, the missing seal, the night I believed my own son had abandoned me. Then I remembered the phone call that changed everything. I had called my lawyer because I thought I needed someone to protect my property. What I really needed was someone to help me protect the truth. And once the truth was protected, everything else followed. If you enjoyed Marlowe's story, subscribe for more emotional family dramas, unexpected betrayals, powerful twists, and stories where underestimated people finally get the justice they deserve.